Man United had their worst ever season in the Premier League last season, and so this summer is very important. They got to make some very wise recruitment decisions. But who should they sign? Welcome to Sensible Transfers, where we identify squads' weaknesses and then identify realistic solutions to fix those problems. We're not going on rumour or gossip, we're looking at the most realistic and sensible solutions based on things like tactics and data and opinion. And so first, we have to work out what Man United actually need, and I found 5 things. 1. They have to stop conceding goals. 2. They need to score more goals. 3. They lack control in games. 4. They need better cover for injuries because most of their team was missing last season. And 5. They need players who fit Ten Hag's tactics but who might also fit someone else's tactics. But let's try and break some of this down, starting with conceding too many goals. Because last season, United's actual numbers were bad, but their underlying numbers were even worse. And if you look at expected goals against, what do we see? Oh boy, we see that they should be 16th in the table for expected goals against. That's bad, putting them somewhere next to Burnley and West Ham, Sheffield United. Not good. If we look at other expected goals models and expected points models, Understat have one, and their expected points model puts United 15th in the table overall. So underlying numbers suggest that's where they should have finished last season. Not good. Just to reiterate, I cannot emphasize enough how bad United's underlying numbers were last season. But the squad looks okay. This is quite a good squad. You've got some top level players here, Højlund, you've got Fernandes, you've got some of these, some other players here. The squad looks okay, but the important thing to remember is that they had loads and loads of injuries, which is a real problem, because this is basically what they had left for most of last season. Everyone was injured at different points of the season, and any team's going to suffer. If you look at Arsenal, for example, imagine they lost Saliba, Gabriel, Saka, Martinelli, Havertz, and Rice all at the same time, or to different parts of the season, you wouldn't do quite as well. So it's kind of fair that Ten Hag can lean on injuries to an extent. But one position we can probably start at is left back, because they are weak there. Luke Shaw is almost always injured, can't rely on him for that. And Malacia also injured last season. So a sensible first thing to look at would be left back. And so my first sensible pick for Man United is at left back, and it's Miguel Gutierrez, who is of Girona. He was at Real Madrid before. He was excellent for Girona last season. You can see from his numbers, he's very good at lots of things a left back should be good at. And what United want a left back to do is be able to overlap, also receive in the midfield and be able to help with build up at times. And that's what Gutierrez is very good at, because you can see this is his positions from last season for Girona. He helps them be versatile in their formation, but you can see different times he's in different parts of the pitch, he can do it all. And if he was in the United team, he would go in here, obviously, put Shaw on the bench or the injury table. And what you want is someone who can overlap and allow this player to come inside to attack through the middle, because United's left-sided forward often comes through into these sorts of positions. Gutierrez is comfortable in these sorts of positions here. That would be pretty useful for them. But there's a problem, because Gutierrez plays for Girona, who are owned by the City Group. Would they let United have him for the amount of money they'd get him for? I don't know. So maybe it's on the verge of fantasy and not sensible, but he's the kind of left back United should be looking for. 22 years old, about turned 23. That's the sort of age you want, profile going forward, who can cover for Shaw and also be your first team player. And we know United are trying to stop conceding so many goals by focusing on getting better centre backs. They've already signed Lenny Yoro. Now, I won't spend too much time on him because we covered him before on the channel, but Yoro will play the right-hand side. He's a bit more of a sweepery kind of player who stays back, because Martinez is more of your kind of attack dog and goes to be aggressive and step out to try and close people down. So you get a nice partnership there between the two. But what we probably need then is someone who can play on this left side as backup to Martinez, because they have Maguire, Lindelof might get sold, you've got Johnny Evans who can play kind of either side. So what we look for probably is a left-footed, left-sided centre-back. And we know that's got to be left-footed because Ten Hag really wants his defender to play on their strong foot on that side. And why is this? Well, he's told us. It's because the left-footed are better oriented on the left side. In possession, you then have better angles. And what he means by the angle of the pass is literally what it sounds like. So say you're Martinez, well, say you're right-footed, and you play a right-footed pass, it's naturally probably going to curl like that round the way. So that's what you get, the player can run onto it. But if you're left-footed, it's a different angle. It goes more like this. You bend it out the way, so the ball's kind of moving forward so a person can run onto it. It changes the way you play into midfield as well, so a left footer, again, is going to probably play a pass round like that, rather than playing it right-footed, which is going to bend the other way. And so it changes the way you want to play. Maguire would always come forward and play this pass out the way. Martinez will tend to play it in the way like this, so you get a different kind of passing angle from a left-footed. That's why Ten Hag wants it. And so I have a few suggestions. Now, I've got one sensible at the end, but I'm going to give you a few just to lead up so you see my working. The first is Alessandro Bastoni of Internazionale. Now, he is 25 years old, a top-level defender already, plays for a huge club. He also does play on the left side, but tends to be on the left side of a back three. The reason I like Bastoni is that he's one of these very modern centre-backs who can carry the ball and get forward. You'll see in his numbers that he's not feared to have the ball on him. He can pass the ball, he can carry it. He can also get into attacking areas and do a bit more with it. So a kind of a long-term player, but expensive because it's internationality. But then I thought having someone who can play at centre-back, but also on the left, actually at left-back, would be very useful to someone like United, considering the problems they've had last season. And so then I arrived at someone like Levi Colwill, who would actually be perfect for Manchester United, but isn't perfect because Chelsea don't want to sell him. He's one of their non-negotiables, will not go anywhere. But that's the kind of player we're looking at, someone young, maybe potentially homegrown, who could come into that team and do really well. But there are, of course, lots of options United could sign. There's loads of fantasy and vaguely sensible transfers. But when you look at all the different aspects you need to consider, physical profile, technical profile, age, whether they'd fit into the team straight away, what they want, can cover both right and left side possibly, because they might sell Lindelof. What you arrive at as a very sensible transfer indeed is Manchetser United. Now that might seem like a cheat, and I know you'll think, but they're already looking at him, we know that for certain. Well, we do know that. But we also called him out in sensible transfers last time, so I think it's fine to go with Manchetser United, and he is a very, very sensible transfer. But the problem for United is that signing a centre-back isn't going to fix their defensive problems, because a lot of them are systemic and come from the tactics that United deploy. Because of course, defending is not just done by centre-backs and a left-back, it has to be done by the entire team. And if we look at the underlying data, we can see how United actually play. This is their playing style on a wheel from 23-24, which is last season. What you'll see is they're quite intense, but the thing that jumps up straight away is chance prevention is incredibly low. This is bad. They're conceding too many chances. Then you shouldn't be leaving this to the last second. And a lot of this comes from direct attacks. This is their direct attacks conceded last season. You can see it just jumps right up here. This is poor. This is to do with tactics, not just individual players. Injuries linked to it, but it's tactics. And this leads to them conceding a huge number of shots. This is how many shots they conceded last season per 90 compared to Sheffield United, who were just below them. Now, the quality of those shots isn't always high, so you might think, well, something's working, but it's not. This is unsustainable. And you might say, well, they won the FA Cup last season, so it's working, but it's not. And I can show you how they won the FA Cup, or how they at least scored their first goal, because it will show us more of the problems and where they need to fix them, and so what players we can identify that will solve those problems. Now, this is the FA Cup final, and what you'll notice here is that United have the option to go short. This is what they have. These small passes are on. These can then be bounce passes in. United could then build in a positional game and have control of the ball and the pitch and build the way they want. But they don't. Ten Hag wants his team to thrive in the chaos, and that's why they go long all the time. This long ball from Onana, he always plays it long. And so this ball goes here to Rodri, and the weird thing is that you can't really predict this amount of space will ever exist in an elite game like the FA Cup final like this. So Rodri heads it on, City have players around to gather it. There's no one from Man United in that sort of space. And it's weird because this is the kind of chaos that Ten Hag wants, even though it doesn't make sense. It leads to direct attacks on their goal, but they can thrive in it. And eventually what happens, you can't predict this, is that Rodri, of all players, gives the ball away to Amrabat. And this defensive midfielder position is what we're going to look at next. Amrabat takes the ball, goes on a run around the sidelines and goes back, very wise. Now again, Dalot could go short, he has options here, but the instructions from the manager, this is what they want to do, is go forward. And so he launches it over the top, Garnacho gets in behind, using pace to get in behind the high line. A mistake from Gvardiol means he heads past his own goalkeeper, and Garnacho scores into an empty goal. But the point is, this is what Ten Hag wants his team to do. He wants his team to be transitional and to get the ball forward. What you end up with is a defensive midfielder on his own trying to protect the defence and be the midfield in his own, covering all of this space. And that's where rival teams can win the ball and attack them with these direct attacks. The ball goes long and forward, it's won by a defender, knocked on, and then the opposition can counter-attack them. So what we need is a player who can cover distances this side better than Casemiro can, who also knows when to step up and try and close this gap between the front line and the back line, but who also can protect the defence in different phases of play, as well as being able to operate as a kind of pivot role next to someone like Kobbie Mainoo. And we already know what kind of player they're looking at. Manuel Ugarte of PSG is heavily linked. They're looking at him, right? Now Ugarte is a kind of player who likes to win the ball. If we look at his numbers, you'll see his tackles are very, very high, and he doesn't really tend to make any progressive passes. It's mostly safe, because what Ugarte does is he spots danger and he tries to destroy it. So he jumps in and tries to win the ball. And when he wins that ball, what he often likes doing is trying to then wiggle past people to turn it into a transitional moment. Now, Ugarte makes sense for what Ten Hag wants, but my sensible pick is different, because what I think United need is just a really good central midfielder who does everything very well. And if you compare what Ugarte's numbers look like to my suggestion, which is João Neves, the Portuguese superstar wonder kid. Now he's at Benfica, he'd be quite expensive, but he is young and good at everything. You can see his numbers are phenomenal. Now here is João Neves playing at the back in the middle. He does this quite a lot. He's a midfielder who drops into the back line, and he's just playing short with his teammates, putting it back and forward, little bounce passes, just to try and draw the opponent out. But what he sees straight away is a player who is free, and as he receives it and the pressure has started, he pings it forward to the wide area and starts an attack. It's a very basic attack, but he also sees things out of possession that are very important and need to clear up. So you know that United need to cover these huge distances because they create so much space. João Neves reads them and closes down things really quickly. Here he is, circled him here. The ball is on the right hand side coming down. He is the defensive mid trying to cover this space. You can see all the space he's trying to cover. Now the ball goes down the right hand side. He skips past his fullback and he recognises that's dangerous because you might think the fullback should deal with him. He doesn't. João Neves sees danger and you see him start to sprint towards this space he's going to cover here, because as the cross comes in, he's in position to stop the cross. It's a small touch that just moves the direction of the ball, which means Benfica don't face a shot on goal. And it's this read of the play that he has that makes him really, really special. So you'll get some players who work really hard and chase the ball wherever, but João Neves plays like he's much older. And data supports it too. He's got the third most carries of any player in the Portuguese Primeira Liga from last season. And he also, you can see his numbers here, this is progressive carries. He carries the ball as well as passing it around an awful lot, and he makes lots of defensive actions. Again, he's very, very young. He's going to be the future of the Portuguese national team probably. This is the sort of level talent United should be getting in to play in their midfield. Now ideally you'd have Neves next to another midfielder, more like this, like Menu, and you're a bit more compact so you don't have that same glaring open hole. That's what you've got. But this is who I'd bring into United if I had the choice, if they had the sensible money to make the sensible transfer. The thing with Ugarte and Neves is that they can cover distances because they can do that and step up to try and close the ball down earlier when it turns over. Casemiro not the same. So if Casemiro's not there, who could they bring in? Now what you want probably, because you're bringing in young players, is someone who can lead, who can provide some experience, especially in that midfield, because Fernandes is so far up the pitch. And that's where my next sensible pick, which is a little bit unsensible, but we're going to go with it anyway, and that is N'Golo Kante. Now, N'Golo Kante is about 33 years old, but if you saw in the Euros, still really on his physical game. He's got physical attributes, and the important thing about Kante that everyone forgets is that he can play. He's really good with the ball at feet. He can pass the ball forward, he can carry the ball forward. In part of a 2, he's absolutely best. He's not part of a 1, so it requires a slight tweak in tactics because you kind of want him to be not like this, you want him to be more as a double pivot here so someone else can drop in and receive the ball. But that's an option, and Kante doesn't have to play every game. He could be one of the kind of squad players who comes in and out. You can step up to win the ball when they need to in turnovers and suits what Ten Hag wants to do, and also gets to play at the very highest level again. But why not Kante? He gives them a lot out of possession, he's good in possession, he gives them a bit of control, a bit of a way to win the ball out of possession to stop all those direct attacks on United's goal, which is one of the big problems we have to look at the very start. In fact, the last thing we have to look at for United is how they score more goals. And they do have a good team now. They've got Højlund, they brought in Joshua Zirkzee, who can play as a bit deeper than Højlund, but they've got someone to deputise for him. They're strong on the left side with Garnacho and Rashford. The only other real obvious weakness, because Dalot picks himself at right back, is probably the right-sided forward. Now they have Amad Diallo, who looks like he'll get more game time this season. They have Antony, who they would happily, it appears, would receive bids for and let him go if they could. And they have Jadon Sancho back in the mix. But Sancho is much, much better on the left-hand side. But if United want to be top level now and be able to be dangerous right now, I think this is where they should identify a weakness and bring in someone else. Now, there's movement in the market in Europe, which means that this player might be available for an affordable fee. And that is because Barcelona have Lamine Yamal playing at right wing. They also want to sign Nico Williams, who could play on both sides, which would mean one of their star players in the past few seasons would be benched. And that is Rafinha. If Rafinha came in, United, for me, would be much, much better. He works really hard out of possession. He's fantastic cutting in from the right-hand side. He can cover on the left as well if need you be, and he can play through the middle if you need that option because your other 2 players are injured, like everyone always is at Man United. So yes, this is meant to be sensible transfers, and United's summer business so far has been pretty sensible, and this leans more towards fantasy. But if they were able to ship out the players they don't want and bring in some money so they can stay within PSR rules and buy these players in, this is what I think the team should look like come the end of the transfer window.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.